Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the World Justice Challenge Finalist Showcase. My name is David Stoyer. I am one of the World Justice Challenge judges. And the World Justice Challenge 2022 is a global competition to identify, recognize, and promote good practices and high-impact projects and policies that protect and advance the rule of law. And this year's challenge is dedicated to recognizing projects that address structural inequities and governance weaknesses exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Applicants were invited to submit a project for consideration in one of three categories. First, access to justice. Second, anti-corruption and open government. And third, equal rights and non-discrimination. We received over 300 applications representing 118 countries. This group was narrowed down to 30 finalists who have joined us here at the forum to present their projects to the rest of us. 5 of these projects will win a $20,000 cash prize, which will be awarded at the forum closing plenary. There are 10 finalists in our Access to Justice category. 5 of them will present their projects in this showcase. Now, around the world, access to justice needs are ubiquitous. They go largely unmet. These include problems related to housing, land, family, employment, and many other issues at the heart of people's economic and social well-being. This underscores the need for comprehensive, people-centered approaches to improving justice services. The 5 projects we'll hear about this morning address systemic justice problems and strengthen justice governance, policies, and practices all around the world. Now, yesterday we talked about principles of moving forward to provide justice and access to justice to people. Today we have the opportunity to meet people that are actually doing it, whose creative and entrepreneurial skills have brought advances and successes to people who are desperately in need of their help. In our showcase agenda today, each finalist will give an 8-minute presentation, after which we will sit down together and have a 30-minute moderated discussion with a representative from each project. So this is an opportunity for us to be inspired, to learn, and maybe find something to support as well. So at this point, let's kick it off. And our first project comes from South Africa. It's the Shonaquip Social Enterprise. And we're going to hear from Erna van Westhuizen, who will present this project to us. And Erna, you have 8 minutes.
I feel like I need a step. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here and for interest in our project. So our project is about, it's just called Equity Mothers. So maybe just a little bit of context. So the World Health Organization says that 2 people in every 10 people are living with a disability. So even if you just look around in the room and you can count 10 people, that's the size of the problem that we are addressing. Through the social enterprise, but obviously also globally. So I think for me, it's just like let that sink in for a minute. Like we are talking about a big part of our population. It's not just a small group of people we are talking about. So why is it important when we talk about access to justice? Simply, when you work with people or your work influences people, disability is no longer something we can choose. If we want to, work around that, it involves us all. So let's just make it practical. So 2 in every 10 people, might they be mothers or caregivers or grandmothers, have a dream for their kids, if they have a disability or not, right? So if I think about my child, I certainly have a dream for her. She's luckily here today. And if I ask any one of you, you have a dream for your child, I'm sure, or your grandchild of any sort. So imagine your dream that you just imagined in your head. So imagine that there's a gap between your dream and the reality simply because there's a disability or impairment on the table. So the white paper on the rights of persons with disability in South Africa is the most recent policy through which our government intends to turn the political vision of inclusion for persons with disabilities and their families into action. For many people in South Africa, unfortunately, there's a gap between the dream that I just talked about and the reality due to policies not translating into practice. What's important is that it's strongly been influenced by the domination of a medical model of disability that encourage professionalization, enforcing a class system and unequal power relations in society. In South Africa, certainly, and I'm sure there's many other countries. So parents of children with disabilities are affected by this oppressive system as they constantly battle to access information that sits in the hand of professionals. They are isolated through social stigma, which often leaves them disempowered. The collective voice is not heard in policy development, implementation, and monitoring. Consequently, their needs and the barriers they face are not addressed, and instead of being advocates for their children and drivers of the children's future, they are left without voice and choice. So here's a little video of Mama Lema. This is her dream for her child, Nana.
Njengoba kungumntana o-disability abe include nabanye abantwana and ndingavuya naxa ke nokufumana isikolo eso sikolo uba ngaba usifumene ibe sisikolo esinayo i-physiotherapist because uba simane simelula simenze uba akwazi ukuresponda because apha eSouth Africa abantwana bethu xa bengayi esikolweni sibe sibafunela isikolo sesibona ingathi amalungelo abantwana abakhubazekileyo awekho.
Okay, my mother says that her dream for Nana is that she finds a good school because here in South Africa, children living with disabilities are not considered as kids. She really hopes that one day Nana gets a good school that can assist her as she is, teach her and love her just like all the other children are loved in the country.
So what can shift? What can make the shift between Mama Lema's dream for her child and the reality? And it's simply and complex the monitoring of policy, implementation of policy. So the white paper that I talked about invite persons with disabilities and their families to actually monitor and take part in that process. But due to the highly complexity of policy and legal frameworks, as well as the past disempowerment that I talked about, this is hugely difficult. So what our project is about. So the solution that we present is two things. The one is the parent network, and then the tool that's called the Let's Talk Parents tool. The parent network was started to respond to the need to address the historical disownment of voice, which resulted in a lack of confidence to assume this monitoring role that they are invited to. The network is a digital network that uses free existing technology to allow parents of children with disabilities to connect across all 9 provinces. They use smartphones to join training every week over WhatsApp, which is an interesting experience. In the case where a parent don't have a smartphone, we have a network parent that connect them to with other parents, and they relay whatever has been talked about in the WhatsApp groups, which means that the network is completely based on participatory approaches, and parents direct and play an active role in what's happening within the parent network. So through working with the parents, it's starting to understand that we need to find a way for parents to be able to deal with the complexity and actually find a way to influence policy in a way. And so in the beginning, I played with the idea of how can they record problems, and then realizing but that's actually perpetuating the problem, because we're putting it out there that parents again need somebody to solve their problems. So The Let's Talk Parents tool is analysis of the articles of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, as well as the pillars of our white paper. It is designed into a user-friendly format that any ordinary South African in the taxi, in the houses, wherever they are, can monitor the policy, the implementation of policy. It's downloadable from Google, Huawei, and soon iStore. It's been designed consciously for rural areas, so it's available offline when people get to Wi-Fi spots that can, it can upload. When I started with 4 parents, which grew to 40 parents in a very short time. At the moment, we've grown to 800 parents. So we are all across South Africa planning to take it over in a serious way. So last year, just to bring context to this, parents in the network had 14,000 times touch points with each other, which means last year only 14,000 times parents in South Africa had space to connect, had access to information, and so forth. So how do we do this? It's a simple app. You can download it from where you are. Parents simply go and they choose this. So they are monitoring now the access to information, the access to education for Nana, as she dreamed about having a school for Nana. Just simply click on the tool, find the tool there. So this is available freely, offline. So then she looks for the white paper pillar that she would like to monitor. So in other words, where there's a gap between policy and implementation. There's a few questions available in 6 South African languages, asking simple questions like, how long have you been on the waiting list? Why are you not in school? Which points then to why there's or the gap rather between policy and implementation. We also collect general information, so disability, race, etc. Because in South Africa we have no idea really what the picture is, because there's quite a big percentage of people that we don't count. I'm just going to skip through it quickly. So the results come through in per white paper pillar, but then also in the subcategory. So in this case, you can see, for instance, that when she press submit, it pops up under rights of education. So in this case, we can see that in the Northern Cape province of South Africa, education there's a huge gap between policy implementation and accessing school. And then we can go into more detail. So for instance, in this case, we simply know that there's just no schools. And then top there, you can see that because we know it's white paper pillar 4, it relates to certain articles of the UN Convention on the rights of persons with disabilities. I really wish I had 10 more minutes. So yes, 2 people in every 10 people have a disability. There's a mother, a caregiver. So please join me to stand and find a space for these mothers to monitor the implementation of the white paper. Thank you. Thank you.
Erna, thank you very much for that fascinating look at the needs of disabled children in South Africa. Our next program to be presented has to do with the legal system in Cambodia. This will be the Cambodia Bridges to Justice project. And let me introduce Kate Flower to talk about this project at this time.
Sam Akunpi, Kampuchea. Thank you from Cambodia. Thank you for this incredible opportunity to shine the light on our defenders and Cambodia's justice system. My name is Kate Flower, and I am here on behalf of Cambodia Bridges to Justice and our Appeals Court project. In January 2013, I was standing outside of Phnom Penh's main prison. At 350% capacity, rooms are so overcrowded, people take turns to sleep at night. I was there waiting for a young boy named Makara. Makara was 19 when he was arrested and tried. At his trial, Makara was found innocent. But because in Cambodia, when the prosecution appeals, you remain behind bars, he remained behind bars. 4 years later, on appeal, his innocent verdict was upheld. But we were sent away that day. The Court of Appeal had not filed his release papers properly. A week later, we went back, Softly spoken and overwhelmed with his newfound freedom, we met Makara. Now, I cannot say what would have happened to Makara but for the intervention of our appeals court lawyer. But poor governance processes see people lost in the system for years, if not decades. Makara was the first case in our appeals court project. Our appeals court project targets high priority cases. These include people who are innocent at trial, people who have overstayed their sentence on appeal, people who have been on appeal for more than 5 years, the elderly and the juvenile. We are the only legal aid organisation working in Cambodia's appeals court system, and our lawyers have now defended over 650 people just like Makara. The number one thing we are learning time and time again about Cambodia's justice system is that if you want to see justice, you need a defender there to amplify your voice and speak your truth. Now, my country director cannot be here today, Mr. Uk van Det. If he is here today, trials proceed without a lawyer or they are delayed indefinitely. He is one of the country's first defenders following the Khmer Rouge and the subsequent civil war. And that is the reality of the fragility of the rule of law in Cambodia, which is why our project is so important. But we have brought a little piece of him here for you, and we have a short video.
Cambodia is still recovering from a torturous past. The Khmer Rouge totally destroyed the legal system, and millions of people were killed with no regard to the presumption of innocence. Even after the Khmer Rouge, torture continued as an investigative tool. Before training as a defender, Uk van Det was a police commander who wanted to shift this norm. He was one of the first defenders to stop this practice and fight for the presumption of innocence. Cambodia Bridges to Justice was created to build the bridge from this torturous past to an ethical future, case by case.
My name is Uk van Det. I am country director of International Bridge to Justice in Cambodia. We work to ensure that all Cambodians have access to legal aid and protect them from the torture and protect the right to fair trial. When I became a lawyer in 1994, there were only 10 lawyers in Cambodia. People did not know about their right and what is the role of the lawyer. We know that when legal aid lawyer is a prison, we prevent torture and protect human rights.
Cambodia Bridges to Justice's Appeals Court project is a lifeline, reducing the severe backlog of cases and alleviating prison overcrowding.
Cambodia used to have a huge backlog of appeals cases, which meant that people sometimes spent years, if not decades, in prison. Cambodia Bridges to Justice and their lawyers have been instrumental in trying to address this situation and providing at least some justice to these people.
Communities are asking for the protection of a lawyer and standing up for their rights. Stakeholders are coming together to protect due process rights and prevent torture. The right to legal aid is now accepted as part of the justice system in Cambodia. Our defenders are protecting and empowering the communities they serve.
My dream is that we work in every court so that all Cambodians can understand their rights and that we can eliminate torture from our society.
Thank you for listening. Akun Charan.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, and thank the Cambodia Bridges to Justice Project for its work on these stunning deficits in judicial process in the country of Cambodia. Our next presenter will be from Asia. So now we've done the other side of Asia. It's Do Bold Oman, which is addressing the problem of women from Africa who are put into terrible positions in the country of Oman. And to tell us about Do Bold Oman, we have Sari Heidenreich.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. I'm so happy today. As you can see, as you can hear me, I'm celebrating. Thank you. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to thank you.
What you just heard is sheer joy from one of our sisters celebrating that we were able to get her a ticket and permission to leave Oman and return to Sierra Leone. But not all of our sisters have had their moment of celebration. I want to tell you this story of Hawa. Hawa went to Oman looking for a way to help her family in Sierra Leone survive. She borrowed $1,000 to pay a recruiter who told her she would work in a supermarket for 6 months and make $450 a month. When she arrived, Hawa was instead taken straight to a home where her passport was confiscated and she was told she would be a live-in domestic worker for 2 years. Hawa cried for 4 days straight. She cleaned, cooked, washed and ironed clothes, took care of a young child and 2 elderly women from 5:30 in the morning until 11:45 at night, with only one 30-minute break. So that's 18 hours a day. And she had no day off. That's right, she worked every single day. I was called a slave, she told me, and told I should work like a slave. They didn't give her a room of her own. They periodically searched her belongings, took away her phone, and disconnected her from the Wi-Fi. Her employers did not provide her with adequate food, and she could not take time off or see a doctor if she was feeling unwell. She began to lose weight and developed a rash, which she had to treat herself with a natural remedy of lime and salt. After a month, Hawa received her salary, but it was only $180, just 40% of what her recruiter had promised. When she complained to the office in Oman, they told her to stay, and that if she came to them for help, they would lock her in a room without food. After 6.5 months with her employer, Hawa felt she could bear it no longer, and who could blame her? She decided to leave, making her a criminal under Omani law. Several months later, the government opened an amnesty period to allow workers who had left their employer to leave the country, but without access to justice, with remedy for wage theft or abuse. Hawa was eager to register, but she didn't qualify. So now her only remaining option is to get her former employer's permission to leave the country, something she nor we have been able to do until this day. In short, she is trapped. This is Hawa's story, but she is not alone. She is one of more than 650 Sierra Leonean women in Oman who have had similar experiences. With a very small team, we have worked with this community for 15 months, speaking directly with 390 women,
collecting 610 detailed survey responses and providing 1,100 instances of support. We found that Hawa's experience is the norm, from the passport confiscation and working hours and wage theft. And while Hawa experienced racist verbal abuse, we found both sexual and physical abuse to be common as well. Additionally, employers rarely allow workers to step outside of their homes and sometimes lock them inside a room or a bathroom as a form of punishment. Because of systemic legal issues in Oman, victims of trafficking and exploitation are literally trapped there, like Hawa. It is illegal for a worker to leave her employer, regardless of abuse or exploitive working conditions. Oman also lacks basic protection mechanisms, such as an emergency shelter. Workers need the permission of their employer to return home as well. But when they ask for it, they are threatened, told they cannot leave, or that they must buy their freedom by compensating the employer for the money that they lost on her. And this practice operates unchecked. If a worker wants to lodge a grievance, she has no effective means to do so. On paper, there are 4 reporting mechanisms, but none of them are effective. We have tried them all, and none have worked. As a result, workers do not have access to justice or other forms of remedy. Oman also has a repressed civic space, meaning that migrant workers have little to no place to turn for support, because we, as one of very few organizations that work in the space, also face many barriers. But we have not let that stop us from making groundbreaking strides for justice for our sisters. We believe that this project is the first to investigate the life cycle of a woman migrant domestic worker from recruitment to repatriation using real-time and near real-time data, and the first to combine research with activities to support access to justice on the ground. This data set is the largest on domestic workers in the Gulf, a group that is one of the most difficult to reach. We identified most of the 650 plus participants in our community as victims of human trafficking and forced labor. And according to the State Department, investigating cases of forced labor is something the government of Oman did not do once in the same time frame. With all this information, we have drafted detailed, data-driven recommendations to both address policy gaps and exploitive practices, and to prevent and address human trafficking and modern slavery in Sierra Leone and Oman. We have mobilized partnerships to create better support systems, and we have negotiated for the release of 22 women, repatriated 131 women, facilitated travel documents for 139 women, and shared evidence to the government of Sierra Leone that we believe has supported the investigation and conviction of one trafficker. This month, we will be releasing our findings along with a blueprint guide to guide changemakers in improving access to justice. This model and the changes we are proposing will benefit not just them, not just this community, but workers globally. And all of this began, at the bottom rung here, with building and empowering a community to share their stories. Because in a system where there is no effective or accessible grievance mechanism, our work on access to justice had to start at the most basic level. Our project demonstrates that how you can collect and use real-time data directly from victims and use that data to guide policy. It also demonstrates how a grievance mechanism can be effective and accessible by those most hard to reach. So, now that you know their stories, what do Hawa and her sisters want you to do? I'll let them tell you themselves through an original song that is part of a music album we produced together.
We need your help, oh God, we need your help. Salom picking then now, oh man, they cry for you help. We've been beaten, molested, and devastated in Oman. Oh God, we cry for your help. Oh my again, when shall we see our home, Sierra Leone? When shall we see our beautiful Mama Salon? With a pig in the of Sierra Leone, they cry for you all.
Thank you, Sari, for that presentation on the very disturbing situation involving domestic servants in Oman. Our next presentation will be from the Kosovo Legal Services Company. And presenting this project, which has to do with the state of the justice system in Kosovo, will be Bardil Hasampapai and Blerda Verveniku.
Thank you, everyone. Such an honor to be here today and aligned with the theme of the day, what works. Hopefully, Bardil and I will share with you what worked in our country and how we managed to create a system with one click away for the criminal past of every convicted person. And we started from here. So basically, all the criminal records were kept handwritten in the registries and in the case files, which were scattered in the archives, and all the courts had different types of practices. So basically, every time a person needed to apply for a job or visa, they need criminal record certificate, and finding the data in these piles is extremely time-consuming and labor-intensive for the court staff. And of course, the period when they would get the criminal certificate back was quite lengthy. So what we did, although the first impression of the NCCR may seem one of a successful development and deployment of a tech solution in the justice sector, but it's much more than that. It is a story of an ordinary citizen who was convicted 10, 15 years ago. And because in the past, before the system was implemented, there was no way to do legal rehabilitation. So basically, once you were convicted, this conviction record always appeared in your criminal record certificate. So every time people got the records back, let's say he was involved in a car accident, the sanctions were executed 15 years ago, the records still remained there. So basically, he got rejected a job or refused a visa because of something that the law, the criminal code, allows for legal rehabilitation. But now with the system, we have a way to just generate a report and get a list of all convicted people who are eligible for legal rehabilitation. Now, from the perspective, okay, so this is how the system looks, and basically we are connected to the Central Registration Agency. And because we have digitalized the data since 1999, which means that now we have a wealth of 20 plus years of data in one system, we are connected to the Civil Registration Agency, which means that the identity of every convicted person is verified through the CRA. We keep the legal basis, and in the last 20 years in our country, we had 4 different criminal codes. We also keep the sanctions, so there's a wealth of data that are being used by the policymakers. More now from the court perspective, what has changed is that this system enabled a birth of a digital culture, because now there is a demand for tools that are making the lives of people working in the court much easier and much more efficient. So they want to shed the old practices and move to the tools that are proving quite efficient.
Well, thank you, Blerta. And it's hard to divide the digital world from the legal part, especially in judiciary, and we are trying to work together. And the system we have built is not only for the convicted person, but unfortunately in Kosovo, it was far worse than that, because the practice showed that people that were under investigation were included in the document that were served for criminal records. So despite the fact that you may not be convicted, but by a mere fact that accidentally or somehow you end up being in a court trial, and then declared innocent during the period of lengthy trials that are in Kosovo, you would still be shown in your records that you are under investigation, and this was in clear violation of some of the basic human rights envisaged by the EU Convention of Human Rights and our Constitution as well regarding the presumption of innocence. And with the new system that we have built, we convinced the institutions and the old mindset of people dealing with judiciary in Kosovo that that should not be shown in the certificate, and we cleaned that system, and now we have people that have not been able to get a job or get promoted or adopt a child or use some basic rights. We have managed through this digital solution that Blerta with her IT team built an excellent database which is now being used and is about to be launched online completely, so that the citizens do not have even to go to the courts and apply for this certificate, which would take them 2 or 3 days. Now they can do it directly online. In addition to that, we have, as Blerta mentioned, the rehabilitation process, which basically, once somebody has been convicted, let's say back in 20 years ago for a forest theft, somebody living in a village cutting in the forest some wood to warm the house, ended up in court for having cut the trees and convicted, but then never dealt with that conviction. It still shows. And let's say with a big diaspora, people wanted to go to Germany or in EU countries, they were refused a visa to see their daughters or family members just because of that record that was shown, and simply the certificate would say has criminal records. So we have, with this project, we have proved that some IT solutions do work in courts and serve the citizens, and we have improved a lot and managed to ease the life of all citizens in Kosovo in getting this service online. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Berit and Blardeel, for that excellent demonstration of how the use of data and IT can actually lead to advances in the access to justice. Our next presentation will be, I believe, remote. It comes from Africa, and I'd like to introduce Mba Victorien from Cameroon, who will discuss the I'm going to give it a shot. Appui pour la protection de l'environnement et le développement Cameroon, which is a group dealing with the rights of people in the Cameroon dealing with development. Mba, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
We hear you.
My English is not very good, but I will try to do my best for this presentation. We can start?
Yes. We can hear you well, Mba, so go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a person in this room who not use rubber? The answer is not, because the wheel of bicycle, motorcycle, and the car we use are actually rubber. But who care about its origin and the problem experienced by the local community and indigenous people? The local indigenous community bordering the rubber concession in Cameroon. In this talk for this morning, we are here to do the presentation about this issue. The context is that Evea Cameroon and Trinidad South Evea from the largest rubber plantation in the world with 129 hectares of concession. The OWNET since 2016 by the world leader in rubber, Alcyon Agri, farmer managed by Sinochem. Created in 1974, Evecam is privatization in 2016. In 1996, brought about 39 million euro to the Cameroonian government with this original 41,000 hectares. Sinochem is in this expansion strategy in 2010 as request and acquired 70,000 hectares in the Jailobo department and in the Ocean department. In spite the presence of this plantation, the population living in the vicinity of the agro-industry continue to live in abject poverty with less than €1 per day. The problem, next. The problem is that the process of land acquisition was carried out without prior consultation, compensation, or indemnization of the local and indigenous population whose lives depend on the deforested area and resources. In specific terms, community don't have legitimate representative and decision-making body related to agro-industry. The specifications are poorly designated, do not contain timing, and the project listed do not represent the real and specific need of the community and are not respected. The vital bonds left between the agro-industry and the community do not respect the norm, and therefore the community do not manage to move in the activity of hunting, fishing, agriculture, and other. Next. In the end, we are working with the community to document the situation and experience by them, and then we contributed to the development of the report entitled Respiration and Restoration Carried Worldwide Mighty Earth, which allowed used to touch Alcyon Agri with warmth. We held a meeting in order to solve the various problems raised in the report. Next. This idea allowed us to work directly with Alcyon, avoiding the different blockage that we were victim of since more than 10 years now, that we initiated the denunciation of the different abuse that the communities have suffered. In terms of realization, we were able to develop negotiation and sign a point of agree document between Alson Agri, Mighty Earth, CD, and APED, and it's led towards sustainable rubber production in Cameroon. The collection and analysis of existing grievances between riparian community and agro-business. The development of grievance resolution plan and its implementation in community bordering agro-industry. Next, for impact, we are at the current stage of development of our work. We can cite three main impacts. The zero deforestation commitment made by Alson has allowed the company to stop clearing nearly 50,000 hectares of virgin forest and to manage them in participatory and sustainable manner with the community through ecotourism activity, community forestry, and the valorization of timber non-forest products. The project has facilitated the establishment of the Cameroon Rubber Farming Council, which is an independent body set up by stakeholders in the project area activity on rubber farming issue, and community right to monitor and evaluate the various commitments made by the company in the sustainable process. The project has helped in the participatory development, validation, and implementation of grievance solution plan for 5 years, value at the 2 billion francs CFA renewable. This is the work we are doing about the taking the rights of the local and the indigenous people around the EVECAM and SOTCAM agro-industry to show that the rights be taken into account. But before to finish, we need to talk about the first question. My question is that, is this person in this room who not use rubber? Maybe I know the answer is not, because the wheel of bicycle, motorcycle, and car we use are actually rubber. But what carried about this origin and the problem experienced by the local and indigenous people? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mba. I appreciate learning about the rights of indigenous people who are experiencing disruption caused by the exploitation of natural resources, in this case, rubber in Cameroon. At this point, I'd like to invite all of our participants, one from each team, to join me at the front, and we'll have a moderated discussion where we can ask some more about your plans and your projects. Erin, how much time do we have left? 40 minutes. Okay, so we're in good shape. And what I think I'll do is I'll ask some questions and go down the line in the order. How about in the order we presented? How does that, so that would be Erna, Kate, and Sari, and then Bartle, and then Mba. Okay. So here's my first question, and this is, I want you to talk about your strategic choices, and my question is, what is the most effective or impactful strategy you have used? What's worked the best for you? Erna?
Yeah, thank you. So in our case, it's almost as simple as just practice what you preach. So what's been working for us is that we let parents guide. So we've used, well, in fact, parents chose a community care model, which basically says that everyone brings something of worth. So for us, that worked. In other words, really use, or not use, but let parents guide that. And I think the other most significant thing is we use network parents. In other words, it's parents that's actually going out and do the work, which means they really don't need us. They are doing their own thing. So I think if I think about the one impactful strategy, then it's to really, really use those who's doing the work. And yeah, so practice what you preach, really.
Kate, what about in Cambodia? What's your most effective strategy?
For us, it was using the appeals court system on a triage basis to target high priority injustices. This way we were able to target the high priority injustices while understanding broader systemic issues with access to justice. And in 2016, the UN said that we had cleared the longest serving appeals cases. These issues we could then feed into our broader legal aid program through rights awareness, capacity building with stakeholders.
Thank you. Sari, tell us about your most effective strategy in Oman.
Yeah, so one of the most effective things we have done, and it's kind of similar, is building community. And so a community of trust specifically. So we put the women that I talked to you about together in a community with us, and we vetted that community, making sure there weren't journalists there, people who were going to use their information, and exploit them further. We built trust between them and us. We were always very transparent with them about what we were doing, what strategies were we using, where were we with our fundraising, what did we need to, what goal did we need to get to in order to make XYZ happen? They had access to our social media so they could see how we were sharing their stories. So there was really an environment of trust, and I think that allowed us to collect the data that we did in the depth that we did. But also, like you were saying, it also allowed the women to support each other. And so, for example, if they didn't understand my English, one of the sisters would step in and basically translate what I said into one of the local languages for another sister who didn't understand. Or they could share, I tried this strategy at this, Ministry of Labor office, and here was my result. So sort of crowdsourcing as well.
Excellent. Bardale, tell us about in Kosovo. What worked best for you?
Well, we try to build on local solutions. So basically, our target was to work with local courts and the people that were dealing with these records for a long time, and after explaining the problem and discussing about the potential solutions, we build the solutions together with them, so that it would be more sustainable, and we build a trust in the end users of the system, and this proved to be a successful strategy, and we hope that it's going to remain there because they feel it as their own solution.
Mba, are you with us still?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay. Mba, tell us what your project's most successful strategy is in achieving your goals.
Success strategy. Hello?
Yes, what do you feel has been your best strategy?
We have best strategy. Our best strategy is that we are working together with the local and indigenous community, and we use the law, the local, national, and international law way concerning the exploitation and exploitation of rubber. We know that for the value chain of the rubber commodity, Alshon Agri is the first leader in this commodity in international country. And he had taken another engagement. He had taken a lot of engagement concerning the durability of the value chain of rubber, and we are working. We are using this engagement to do the pressure for the company and the government to change and to take the right of the local and indigenous people in development the rubber concession.
Thank you, Rob. So let me turn to another question for our panel. You've all had a lot of experience in your projects. Why don't you give us your best advice as to other change makers who might want to do a similar project? What have you learned? What did you learn the hard way? What did you learn the good way? Erna?
I mean, very similar to what I said in the beginning, but my advice would be to include your beneficiaries. I know it sounds so, I don't know, obvious, superficial, but it's been what's been working for us. It almost feels like more work or harder work because you need to constantly ask for advice and input. But if it wasn't for that, we would have definitely not gotten so far. And I think to invite the voice of, in our case, to invite the voice of children who cannot represent themselves, in particular, through the voice of parents. I think maybe in terms of advice, maybe some of you have advice for me, is how do we adapt to a very fast-changing context? I mean, it's so fast that by the time when you apply for funding, etc., by the time it arrives, the context has changed significantly. So I think to navigate that has been a skill to learn, and in some cases even turning down money. I've actually recently had to do it because I was just feeling that it's going to break the process. So I think the best advice is to stick with what you planned, to make sure that you find local strategies to involve people, and maybe in South Africa's case, really practicing democracy. So really practicing it, not just because it's something nice to do.
Thank you. Kate, what lessons can you share with people about change making?
For us, it was looking to decentralise your access to justice program and moving outside of the capital, working directly with the community and the duty bearers within those communities at all levels, CSOs, commune chiefs, informal, formal justice systems, so you can build the trust. I think this will be a common theme. So you can build the trust with the people that you're serving and the people that you're trying to work with. And for us, we find that leads to sustainability so that we can ensure that the rule of law is really weaved into the fabric of the society.
Thank you, Kate. Sari, what can you tell us from your experience that will help other people go down a similar path of change?
Yeah, so I would echo the trust, which was in my previous answer, as well as bringing in the voices of, the community that you're working with. The reason that we have done the interventions that we do, the repatriation, is because we ask our sisters, what do you need? What do you want? And then we also explain the limitations, and we work together to move that forward. In terms of similar projects, I think one of the most innovative things about what we did is how we collected data in real time and near real time from a very difficult to reach population, which was domestic workers. And so I would love others to know that it is possible to get this data, for governments to know that we can base policy on this data because it is possible to get the data. And for companies and investors to know that it's possible to monitor our supply chains better because audits, as we have been doing them, aren't effective, but grievance mechanisms like what we set up are. And so this is really a replicable process and procedure that we've done, and it proves that it can be done and that we can use this data to implement large-scale change.
Speaking of collecting data, Bardiel, what can you tell us that
Yes,
you've learned
actually,
to advise us? Yes.
Thank you. Well, actually, we underestimate the impact the criminal records have in the future life of people that have had wrongdoing in their lifetime. And surprisingly enough, even EU countries themselves have problem with criminal records. And when we talk about problems in other regions and other continents, we forget that very often we massively violate human rights, even within EU member states and Council of Europe members, because the way data are kept and the way are served, very often a lot of people are deprived from their basic rights, and therefore they cannot fully enjoy their rights. So I do believe that there is plenty of room worldwide to use digitalization, to use data, to use this technology in not only making people's life easier, but especially making sure that with the data that we have, we do not misuse them and use in a way that jeopardize people's basic rights.
Thank you, Bardiel. Mba, can you tell us what your advice would be to other people that want to make positive change?
Can you repeat, please?
Repeat. Mba, what advice would you give to other people who want to make change based on your experience?
For make change in my experience, we need to continue to work about the capacity building from community to have the representative legitimate representative about the making decision concerning the activity or the issue concerning the rubber plantation. To have the capacity to present the real and specific problem of the community, to vulgarize the law concerning development of agro-industry, starting from the process of acquisition of land in the Cameroon law, know the mechanism concerning the durability of rubber in international, and now finally to have the social awakening, to do the monitoring and to continue to talk about the rights of the community.
Thank you, Mba. My next question to the panel will be, your projects have all accomplished a great deal, but there is still more to do. And can you tell us, what are your plans for the future? Do you want to continue as you are? Do you want to expand? Do you want to change focus? Where do you want to go with your work? Erna?
You mean other than winning the prize money? So we've been working really dedicatedly to get a network parent in each district in South Africa. because in many cases that's the only way to reach other parents, so those without smartphones, etc. So our goal is to have a network parent in each town. That's the only way that we can really build a movement forward. So that's definitely something we are working forward. We are expecting exponential growth within the next 3 years. Because of the use of the Let's Talk Parents tool that's also translated now into local languages, and having these network parents in each district, but then hopefully in each town. So we expect growth. We've already have a few parents from Uganda, Zimbabwe, Swaziland that's been joining, so that's definitely a dream to build that forward. And then just very practically, a way forward would need to find a way to build a platform. So at the moment, we train the 800 parents on WhatsApp every week, which is an interesting experience. Let me just say it like that. And we are 2 people really doing this work. So moving forward, getting more people and finding a way to build a platform that we can get outside of WhatsApp, because we keep on outgrowing the WhatsApp maximum a number of people that we can allow. So, or rather not allow, but onboard into the groups. Yes, so I think that's what's next for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Erna. Kate, what's next for building bridges in Cambodia? What are you looking forward to?
What are we looking forward to? There are 40,000 people around about on appeal in Cambodia's prisons. 30% of them are waiting for their appeals. It's about 11,000 people. In 2020, the Ministry of Justice, Cambodian Ministry of Justice, opened 3 new courts of appeals. So there was 1 in Phnom Penh. There are now 4 in 3 other different provinces outside the capital. We are in Phnom Penh and Battambang. There are 2 appeals courts with no legal aid lawyers. So our first priority is putting lawyers there. We want to collect the decade of experience we have already in the appeals court system and prepare a handbook. We don't have the resources to defend all these people. I don't know who would. But the Bar Association does have a legal aid program. It's just quite dysfunctional. But we want to prepare the handbook to train the Bar Association legal aid lawyers so they can then do it. We also want to train prisoners to triage cases, and this will be a delicate next step. And the key one as well, they're all key ones, the key one as well is to change the law around when a prosecution appeals. So if you're found innocent at trial, you can at least go and spend the next 2 years waiting for your appeal in the community and try and rebuild your life. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sari, what's the future for Dubold?
So we are right about to release a major report that's going to be somewhat of a culmination of what we found and the data that we've collected. So that is really exciting for us. And we collected all of this data, by the way, or most of it, like during the pandemic. So this is the situation of the pandemic opens doors in certain ways, and using the technology that we did to access people who you couldn't reach really physically pre-pandemic either. So all of this data is going to be published in a report that will empower the governments to actually understand the scale of the problem. And then we have a lot of detailed recommendations for the governments of Oman and Sierra Leone as well, to both prevent more trafficking from happening and then systems changes in Oman so that workers can actually access justice. And we plan to continue to lobby those governments and help them to implement these changes. We can expand the reach as well. So we've been focusing on Sierra Leoneans in Oman because that was the community that first invited us in. But there are domestic workers and workers in other sectors of many other nationalities who have reached out to us in a trickle, and we just haven't had the resources to fully support those other communities. So there's a lot of room for expansion there, as well as into other Gulf countries. And then we're going to continue to work with our Sierra Leonean sisters who are in in those ever overflowing WhatsApp groups, to empower them and to continue to work with them to understand what their needs are and how we can meet them. Unfortunately, unless there is another amnesty, the only way we can get people out is through one-on-one negotiations. So that part will slow until there's some legal changes.
Okay, thank you, Sari. Bardil, what's next up for Kosovo Legal Services?
Yes, we would like to expand the use of technology in courts. It's surprisingly enough that even in EU member states, still today, we serve invitations to the courts manually. We send to a mail post office, and it goes to invite a party to come to a hearing. And a lot of hearings fail as well due to that. And we don't use the technology to invite parties to the court or serve a decision or serve some basic services. And we do not realize the potential that the technology has and offers to us to improve efficiency of the court system, openness, data collection, and all sorts of services that we can benefit from. And we encourage the use of technology, and we are preparing for some new projects for Kosovo judiciary that we would like to introduce and implement in the future.
Thank you. Mba at APED, can you tell us about your plans for the future of APED?
Yes, for our next step, we need to continue on doing the monitoring about the engagement taking by the Alcyon in Cameroon concerning exploitation of rubber. And now, immediately, we need to do the monitoring about the implementation of the grievance plan we developed Alcyon in the community and APED. And we need to continue our working to be that the Cameroonian Rubber Farming Council to be that the Cameroon Rubber Council need to be operational, and we need to continue and documented the engagement taken by Alcyon at the international level concerning the durability of the rubber exploitation, and we can do the denunciation indirectly with the rubber consumer. What we need to go and do for the next step. But we know this is the next step, but we don't have the resource. We don't have money, we don't have material to go and to do this work in the field, because you know EVECAM and SUD-EVEA is very largest, and we have a lot of community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mba. Aaron, what's our time? How much time we got? We got 10 minutes. Okay, panel, we're going to do a lightning round, and I'm going to throw, as we'd say in the U.S., I'm going to call an audible here, because I don't think you've prepared for this. But listening to your presentations, I've heard a lot about working with other organizations, working with other people. What advice can you give us about partnering and working with government actors, other private actors? What can you tell us about that? Erna?
I think so at the moment in South Africa we don't have disability law, so we are working towards 2030 to get that into place. Of course, the data that that parents collect will make that happen. There's no way that we can do that alone. So we partner with government, private business, other NGOs, social enterprises, because we can't. I think it's not about we can't do something. I think we acknowledge that we can't do everything perfect. So we need people who can bring what we can't. So we are absolutely up for partnership. And in effect, the network is a partnership because we partner with all the network parents constantly. So I think it's about choosing the right partner. I think it's about finding a partner that share your values and that really complement your work. I think we all know that partnerships can be amazing or challenging. So I think for me that's the thing.
Good advice. Kate, what's your experience partnering in Cambodia?
Our Appeals Court project is a partnership with UNOHCHR, and it's been going for a decade. So we're able to share resources and skills. But I think quite simply our work is not possible without strong partnerships, both at the Ministry of Justice level, the General Department of Prisons, and within the communities. In our first phase, we're in our 5th phase at the moment. In our first phase, we could not access the prisons. We have a broader legal aid program and we have no problem accessing prisons for that. But for some reason, in the appeals court system, we were not able to access people in prison, which is vital. So we ended up getting an MOU with the General Departments of Prisons. So for the past decade, we have had that to ensure that we can work with everyone involved and afford some form of justice for people.
Sari, how about in Oman? How have you partnered?
So there was a couple different levels that we've partnered on. We've worked with the government. We periodically will get calls from prison officials who say, you know, we have somebody here and can you pay to deport them, basically? Can you help us with that? So we've partnered in that way. We've also been very grateful for an excellent partnership with the Embassy of Sierra Leone in Saudi Arabia. They don't have an embassy in Oman, so Saudi covers them, and we've had a great working relationship with them. They facilitated travel documents for the women free of charge since they're victims of trafficking and exploitation. And at one point, for a short period of time, we were able to arrange COVID test waivers for when the women arrived back in Sierra Leone. The government waived that test fee for a period of time. And then we work with a referral organization back in Sierra Leone so we can refer women for support services upon repatriation. And then finally, we have a small group of volunteers that are on the ground in Oman as well, from other migrant worker communities as well. I won't go into too many details on that, but we're grateful for their support to do some of the in-person things that are necessary across the city and country.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sari. Bardil, what is your partnership experience?
Well, partnership from our perspective means that public sector is not partnering with the private sector to the extent for the public interest. The private sector is very advanced. We talked today about self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, and the private sector is so advanced in selling goods in markets, in wide markets, using technology, online contracts and online services of all types and forms. And the public sector is lacking behind in some core basic services that they can benefit. So partnering with private sector, with labs, with innovation and technology that is available out there in the market would be our, I believe, need and our future. So building trust between public and private sector and partnerships would benefit a lot.
Thank you. Mba, who have you been a partner with that has helped you in your program?
Yes. Can you repeat, please?
Mba, who have you had as a partner that has helped you reach your goals in your program?
For our program, we are working with the government and agro-industry, and the relation is not very bad, because now we can invite the agro-industry in the meeting with the community and to explain what is the problem, what is the social problem, and what is the engagement we take by agro-industry. Before it don't be easy, but now it's very quickly, it's very, what can do? It's very easy. And government, before look the NGO that the dog and cat, and now the relation is a few normal. You know, I'm concerning Alson Agri. He have the certification who working about the value chain in the rubber, and he needs the contribution of the local NGO, and we are working together, and we are here to more explain the problem of community and what the company can do. This were our relationship.
Thank you, Mba. And let me just say one thing I've heard from all of you is that building partnerships and collaborations is a big part of the success of your programs. And I've also noticed that you're working with the people that are definitely part of the problem. The courts in Cambodia, the schools in South Africa, the courts in Kosovo, the government of Oman, certainly, and the rubber companies and the government in Cameroon. So I think it's really interesting that these forward movements, these advances in access to justice, find themselves built on broad coalitions that you all are forming, and that is terrific. Okay. We have 5 minutes, so we're going to do even a super lightning round. And I will go one by one and give us your parting thoughts on what you think is the biggest need in your program to move forward. The one thing. Can you do that, Erna?
You know, the first person always. I think, you know, there's many practical things, but I think at the core, I think maybe one thing that will make it move forward is if we shift perceptions about disability. I think if you don't believe that all children can learn and play, I don't think you will make an effort to listen to what parents are saying. So I know again, it sounds like something that, you know, of course we would want to do, but that's not something that's happening automatically at all. So practical things aside, I think maybe if we can shift perceptions, we can shift budget allocations towards disability, assistive technology, etc. So yeah, I think maybe that's one thing that can help.
Shifting perceptions of disability. In Cambodia, Kate, what's the one thing that you would really like to accomplish, you'd like to change?
We'd like more time. In my decade of experience within the Appeals Court project, shifting consciousness takes time. Judges move between courts, justice stakeholders, prison chiefs, they move around every 4 years, and donor periods are 3 years. And so we would like long-term funding to allow us the time to focus on the work so we can have some stability, because rule of law, I think we will all agree, is just really not a quick fix.
Sari, what's the one thing you want to get done now in Oman?
So you got to stop the leaky faucet. So we really need to see and work together with partners in Sierra Leone to to stop the trafficking of women to the Gulf, and we need to see large-scale system changes in the way that domestic workers and workers in general are treated in the Gulf and their access to grievance mechanism and justice.
Thank you. Bardil, what's the one goal you have in Kosovo?
Well, to see, we would like to see smart courts, so that they use technology, smart courts that use technology, and they can use in many areas. And sometimes technology is punctual, is fair, let's say if you have to delete your records, to go back to what we have done, if you have to delete your records from the system, if you leave in the hands of a judge or a clerk or an officer sitting out there where you have to submit a request and explain why you are eligible and entitled to be deleted from the criminal records, if you have automated the system as we have done, the moment the time envisaged by the law elapses, the system automatically deletes you. So if you go and get your records today, but then in a week time, you have the time has elapsed, and you go after a week and get your records, automatically it should not be shown in your certificate, and there is no need for any human factor. So this is something that can be done in today's world so easily, and no one is doing.
Excellent. Mba in Cameroon?
Yes, we need that the government and the company take the right. We need that the government and the company take the right of the local and indigenous people when it's giving the land of the company. You need to come and do the consultation with the community. We need that the community have the legitimate representation in the making decision. And we need that the cahier de charge when we are the cahier de charge can have the legal and the specific project concerning the community that we need for the development and the agro-industry. And community can say that agro-industry is not very bad, and the local community need the job. You need the job concerning the agro-industry, but it's not the workers who go and carry the water in the company or the thing like that. But you need the responsibility post in making decision concerning the company. This is why the community need.
Okay, thank you, Mba. And we're at the end of this session. I want to give my thanks to our presenters, Erna van der Westhuizen from Shonequip Social Enterprise in South Africa, Kate Flower from Cambodian Bridges to Justice. I want to thank Sarah Heidenreich from Dubold Oman, Bardil Hassan Papai, and Blerton Bevan Nico from Kosovo Legal Services, and Mba Vitorien from APED in Cameroon. I also want to thank our top-notch AV people, tech people in the back. Good job, guys. And to the staff of the World Justice Project for helping us out today. Thank you, everyone. Please enjoy the rest of your day.